It was a calm October night in the small town of Millbrook, the kind of town where the sound of rustling leaves or a barking dog could be heard streets away. People went to bed early, doors remained unlocked, and danger was something read about in newspapers, never experienced firsthand. But on the night of October 18th, 1997, that fragile peace was shattered. In a cozy house at the edge of Willow Lane, 28-year-old schoolteacher Clara Reeves was murdered in what would become one of the most haunting, unsolved cases in the town's history. Clara lived alone in a modest two-bedroom house surrounded by overgrown hedges and an old oak tree that creaked whenever the wind passed through its branches. Her life was quiet and predictable. Each morning she left for the local elementary school where she taught literature, and each evening she returned home, often carrying stacks of graded papers. She wasn't the kind of person anyone could imagine being involved in violence. That's why her death shocked the entire community. It began when a neighbor, Mrs. Hayes, noticed Clara's porch light glowing long after midnight. The teacher's car was still parked in the driveway, and the curtains were drawn shut, which was unusual. Concerned, Mrs. Hayes called the police. When officers arrived and forced their way inside, the silence inside the home felt heavy, almost suffocating. Nothing seemed immediately out of place until they reached the hallway. There, they found Clara lying motionless near the doorway, her hand stretched toward the telephone as if she had been trying to reach it. The living room told a quiet story of sudden struggle. A vase lay shattered, books were scattered across the rug, and one of the window curtains was torn. Yet despite the disarray, the scene didn't feel random. There were no signs of forced entry, and her wallet, jewelry, and cash were untouched. It looked as if the killer had entered the house calmly, perhaps even invited in, and left just as quietly. The autopsy confirmed that Clara had died from a single blow to the head, followed by strangulation. There was no DNA, no fingerprints, and no clear motive. The detectives were left staring at a mystery that seemed carefully constructed to hide every trace of truth. That night, as police sealed off the house and forensic lights flickered through the windows, the people of Millbrook stood behind the police tape, stunned and whispering. No one knew it then, but the echoes of that night would haunt the town for decades. The investigation into Clara Reeves's murder began with urgency and confusion. Detectives worked day and night, searching for anything that might explain how a beloved teacher could meet such a brutal end in her own home. At first, suspicion fell on those closest to her. Friends and colleagues described Clara as kind, organized, and passionate about her work, but several hinted at a recent change in her behavior. She had seemed distracted, often glancing over her shoulder as if someone was watching her. Some nights, neighbors reported seeing her porch light flicker on and off, even after she had gone to bed. As detectives dug deeper, they uncovered fragments of a life that didn't match the calm image Clara showed the world. Just 3 weeks before her death, she had ended a long and tense relationship with Michael Turner, a contractor known for his temper. People in town remembered their arguments, usually quiet but sharp enough to draw attention. Still, when police questioned him, Michael had a solid alibi. He was attending his sister's birthday dinner that night, confirmed by several family members. With no physical evidence connecting him to the scene, suspicion quickly shifted elsewhere. Then came a disturbing discovery. Among Clara's belongings was a police report she had filed just 5 days before her death. It described a man following her car late at night as she drove home from the grocery store. She mentioned seeing headlights appear in her rearview mirror for several miles before turning abruptly into her driveway. When she stopped, the other car had driven past slowly, vanishing into the dark. She hadn't provided a name, only describing the vehicle as an old green sedan with one broken headlight. Investigators searched for the car but found nothing. What they did find, however, was even more unsettling. Hidden deep in her desk drawer was a small cassette tape labeled "Do Not Listen." When detectives played it, they heard a faint hum, possibly from an engine, followed by soft footsteps and the creak of a door opening. There were no voices, no clear sounds, just a few seconds of eerie, muffled noise. Experts couldn't determine where or when it was recorded, but it left everyone uneasy. With no suspect, no motive, and no leads, the case slowly began to lose momentum. After months of dead ends, investigators boxed up the evidence and stored it in the archives. What had started as a desperate search for justice was now another unsolved mystery, buried beneath the quiet surface of Millbrook. 2 decades passed before anyone revisited the murder of Clara Reeves. The case file sat untouched in the Millbrook Police Department's archives, its edges yellowed with time, the word unsolved stamped in fading red ink. By 2018, most of the original investigators had retired, and many believed the case would remain buried forever. That changed when Detective Lena Ward joined the department. She was new to the town, meticulous in her work, and fascinated by forgotten cases that others had given up on. While reviewing old reports, she came across Clara's file and was immediately drawn in by the strangeness of it, the staged crime scene, the missing motive, and especially the mysterious cassette tape. Lena began to re-examine every piece of evidence using modern forensic technology that hadn't existed in the 1990s. The tape was cleaned and enhanced, revealing faint background sounds previously missed by investigators. There was a steady rhythmic hum beneath the footsteps, something mechanical that repeated in perfect intervals. It didn't match any household appliance from that era. The sound intrigued Lena, but it wasn't enough to draw conclusions. She then requested the original items collected from Clara's home to be reprocessed for trace evidence. Under ultraviolet light, a new detail appeared, tiny specks of soil embedded in the fibers of the living room carpet. When compared to local samples, the soil didn't match the area surrounding Willow Lane. After testing, it was traced back to the old quarry woods, a place abandoned for decades and avoided by locals because of safety hazards and eerie rumors. Lena's curiosity turned into determination. She led a small team to the quarry, a dense stretch of forest filled with rotting wood, rusted metal, and fragments of concrete from old industrial buildings. The deeper they walked, the quieter it became until they stumbled upon the remains of a burned-down shack. Most of it had collapsed into the earth, but something metallic glimmered beneath the debris. Inside the ashes, they discovered a rusted locket with a small photograph still intact. Despite the damage, Lena recognized the face. It was Clara Reeves. The locket looked personal, something that had been kept for years before being hidden or destroyed. Someone had tried to erase a memory. That single find changed everything. It proved the killer might have had a connection to the quarry and reignited the cold case that had haunted Millbrook for more than 20 years. The discovery of the locket from the old quarry woods gave investigators the breakthrough they needed. When Detective Lena Ward reopened the case publicly, she appealed for anyone with memories or suspicions from the 1990s to come forward. Most of the town had moved on, but whispers returned to life. Old neighbors recalled a quiet man who used to linger near the school where Clara taught. He was not a parent or a staff member, yet he was often seen standing near the fence during recess. Someone finally remembered his name, Earl Whitman. Earl had worked briefly as a maintenance employee for the town's public works department. He was known for being reclusive and odd, keeping to himself and living in a small rented house near the outskirts of Millbrook. Records showed he left town just weeks after Clara's murder, never to return. When Lena traced his movements through employment and property records, she discovered he had changed his last name twice over the years, moving from state to state and leaving no consistent trail. Each time he relocated, complaints of stalking or trespassing followed, but never enough evidence existed to convict him. After months of searching, Lena finally located him living alone in a remote cabin several hundred miles away. She obtained a warrant and arrived with a small team early one morning. The cabin was in disrepair, surrounded by thick woods and silence. Inside, it looked frozen in time. Dust-covered furniture, faded wallpaper, and boxes stacked against the walls. In one corner of the cabin sat an old metal trunk secured with a padlock. When officers broke it open, they uncovered a chilling collection of photographs. Inside were dozens of images of women taken from a distance, at grocery stores, schools, and parking lots. Some photos were so old they had yellowed at the edges. Among them, in the middle of the stack, was a photograph of Clara Reeves. Her image had been cut out and pasted into a small frame, the corners worn as if handled repeatedly. Beneath it lay another disturbing piece, a map of Millbrook with several locations circled, including Willow Lane and the old quarry woods. Earl was arrested and brought in for questioning. He denied knowing Clara, denied ever being in Millbrook, and refused to explain the photographs. 2 days later, before he could face trial, he took his own life inside his holding cell. A short note was found beside him containing only 4 haunting words: The echoes never stop. After Earl Whitman's death, the case seemed to have reached its end, yet Detective Lena Ward couldn't shake the feeling that something was still missing. The evidence connected him to Clara Reeves, but too many questions lingered unanswered. Why had Clara gone to the quarry? How had Earl gained access to her house without forcing entry? And what exactly was the meaning behind the words he left behind? The echoes never stop. These questions kept Lena awake at night, driving her to review the case one final time. She began by revisiting the old cassette tape, the one Clara had hidden in her desk drawer labeled, "Do Not Listen." The enhanced version revealed details no one had noticed before. Beneath the footsteps and the faint humming sound, Lena heard something else, a rhythmic pulse that matched the frequency of old electrical generators once used at the quarry. This detail confirmed a chilling theory. The recording wasn't made in Clara's home, but at the abandoned quarry itself. Piecing the clues together, Lena theorized that Clara had discovered something before her death. Perhaps she had recognized the man who'd been following her and decided to confront him. She might have gone to the quarry to gather proof or to demand answers, unknowingly walking straight into a trap. When she returned home that night, Earl likely followed her, silencing her forever. The staged crime scene, the absence of fingerprints, and the eerie quiet, all signs of someone who planned the attack carefully and knew exactly what to erase. With the new findings, the department officially closed the case in 2020, concluding that Earl Whitman was responsible for the murder of Clara Reeves. Yet even with justice served, the town of Millbrook could not let go of the unease that hung over it. The old quarry was sealed off, but locals still avoided the area. Some claimed that on still nights, faint echoes of humming and soft footsteps could be heard drifting through the trees, as though Clara's final recording was still playing somewhere in the dark. Detective Lena Ward often returned to Willow Lane, standing outside Clara's former home as the porch light flickered faintly. For her, the case was solved but never settled. The truth had surfaced, but the echoes, those quiet reminders of fear, loss, and unanswered questions, remained, whispering through Millbrook like a voice that refused to fade.